here last week, you're probably wondering, well, Daryl, we're going backwards, because last week we looked at chapters 4 and 5. And just going back to the introduction of this series, the book Song of Songs is not written in chronological order. It's more of a love poem between a peasant princess, a simple Jewish girl, and her lover Solomon, who happens to be the king of Israel. And sometimes when I'm teaching on a passage of the Bible, I'll come across an image or a word phrase that's so powerful that you just have to unpack it. It's the kind of phrase or image that sticks with you long after the rest of the talk or the rest of the reading that you're doing. And today's passage has one such word phrase. And even though it's located in the middle of our reading today, in verse 14, I want to deal with it right now. Because I think if you get this, it'll put everything else into context, and the rest of the message will just stick with you that much longer. So here the peasant princess is speaking about her husband, the king, verse 14. He is like a bouquet of sweet henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. Now, En-Gedi was and is a small community on the west shore of the Dead Sea. And if you look at a satellite picture, which you can see right here, En-Gedi is like halfway up the Dead Sea on the left-hand side there. And the reason it's such a small community is because the surrounding area is some of the most inhospitable in all of Palestine. En-Gedi is smack dab against a sea that you can't drink the water of, and it's surrounded by arid, dry, hot desert. And so, in fact, if you think about when Song of Songs was written, this would have been an inhospitable place. Humans couldn't live there because the nearest fresh water would have been 20 miles away, except for the fact that En-Gedi contained a spring that flowed year-round, and it provided fresh, clean drinking water. And En-Gedi's spring was a refuge for people and also for animals. And when King Solomon's father, David, was being pursued by Saul, who was an earlier king, he went to En-Gedi. David went to En-Gedi. He fled there, and he hid out. And so for David, En-Gedi was an oasis, a hideout, a getaway. And so when the peasant princess is saying that her lover is like henna blossoms from En-Gedi, she's making a statement about their relationship as husband and wife. And she's saying that their love is her getaway. Her sweet spot, her oasis. And the word for us reading the book today is that for marriages to last, for marriages to be mutually fulfilling, for husband and wife, both spouses need to work hard to make the home, the place where they reside, an En-Gedi. That's what today's talk is about, how to keep and make your home an En-Gedi. So, if you just think about life for a moment, whether it's your work life or if you're a student, the coursework that you do, family life, life can be cruel at times. And so one of the greatest gifts that spouses can offer to each other is to create that oasis in the home, the place where you reside. And so that's some homework for you. If you're married, work to make your home a space that your spouse wants to spend time in. Make your home a space that your spouse wants to come home to when they're away. Make it a refuge, a place of safety, and a place where both of you can be refreshed. And I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you, but the things that wives need to do to make that home an En-Gedi for their husbands differ somewhat from the things that husbands need to do to make the home that refuge, that En-Gedi for their wives. And since I'm a guy, I figure I'm pretty qualified to talk about the things us guys need. But in this instance, the very things that qualify me to speak about the needs that guys have disqualify me from speaking about the needs that women have. In fact, I'd probably be risking something. So I'm not going to do that. Now, it just so happens that I'm very close to someone who's qualified, eminently qualified, to talk about the needs of women, and that's my lovely wife, Barb. So I'd like, Barb, if you could come forward, and maybe you guys can encourage her. She hasn't done this for a while. So are we really going to do this?
Well, someone's got to do it. Any you out there want to come up here and take the subject on? Anybody else out there want to address it? No? Well, try was spoken. Before we say anything, we want to issue a bit of a disclaimer. And it's this. Our marriage is not perfect. And Melissa already told you that. Greg already told you that. I'm getting the sense that everybody around here sort of gets that if they hang out here normally, because they've probably seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not perfect, but our intention here this morning in sharing isn't to set up our marriage or our family as a perfect one. We fight. You saw that on the video. We have rough patches. And we've said this before, but it's worth repeating. Only by the grace of God has our marriage survived beyond its first year, which was really tough for both of us. And there's not as much sex as there should be. Close your ears, kids. This being said, we are genuinely in love. In good conscience, I can say we work hard to make our marriage stronger all the time. We don't settle. And most importantly, for 19 years, we've built our marriage on the principles that God provides for marriage in the Bible. We have found them to be trustworthy time after time. Wouldn't you agree, Daryl?
Definitely. In his New York Times bestseller entitled The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman says that there are 5 ways that husbands and wives communicate love in a relationship. And each of these 5 are important. Number 1 is words. So talking to one another, with one another. Number 2 is gifts, so offering presents to one another. Number 3 is service, doing things for each other. Number 4 is time, so just spending time with. And then number 5 is physical, or touch, physical contact. Now, while all 5 love languages are valid, and all 5 make up a healthy relationship, each individual has a primary love language. Which means this, that if your primary love language is receiving gifts or service, don't assume that it's your spouse's primary love language either. If you really want your spouse to feel loved, then it's important to pay attention to what their love language is and communicate it accordingly. So, again, there's some homework for you married couples. If you don't know from that list what your spouse's primary love language is, whether it's words, gifts, service, time, or touch, then why don't you later today make a pot of coffee, sit down together, and determine what that is, and then spend the rest of the week between now and next Sunday practicing their number 1 love language so that you can affirm your love for them. And if you do that, you'll be surprised at how the sparks fly, and I mean in a good way.
Since today's reading starts with the woman speaking, I'm going to start reading at verse 7. I want you to listen carefully to today's readings, and you'll notice that this couple exercises all 5 love languages throughout the section that we're sharing this morning. I'm going to read from the NLT, the New Living Translation, because I find it's most conversational. You just really feel like you're in on the conversation that these people are having. So, verse 7. There is a shadow on. There we go. Tell me, my love, where are you leading your flock today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? For why should I wander like a prostitute among your friends and their flocks? And the man responds with,
Don't you mean king?
We promised we weren't going to fight in front of the people.
The king responds with, verse 8, If you don't know, O most beautiful woman, follow the trail of my flock and graze your young goats by the shepherd's tents.